Hello and welcome to Cloud Learner's Journey Part 12 of Azure Administrator Associate. Real exam questions and answers with explanation and reference links are available in the description. So let's get started. If you like the video, please do like, share and subscribe to our Cloud Learner's Journey YouTube channel to help you pass the AZ-104 exam and become an Azure Administrator Associate. Question number 1. Your company has a Microsoft SQL Server Always On Availability group configured on their Azure virtual machines. You need to configure an Azure internal load balancer as a listener for the availability group. Here the solution is, you create an HTTP health probe on port 1433. Does the solution meet the goal? And the options are A, yes, B, no. And the correct option is B, no. Health probes are to check if the specified port or protocol are responding accordingly and also for monitoring the health status of the backend servers or instances. So you need to configure a load balancing rule to allow route traffic to the SQL Server instances. Next, question number 2. Your company has a Microsoft SQL Server Always On Availability group configured on their Azure virtual machines. You need to configure an Azure internal load balancer as a listener for the availability group. It is same as previous question, but the solution here is different, and the solution is, you set session persistence to client IP. Does the solution meet the goal? And the options are A, yes, B, no, and the correct option is B, no. Session persistence ensures that a client will remain connected to the same server throughout a session or period of time, because load balancing sends user to unique servers each time they connect. This can be a complicated or repeated request which may slow down. Next, question number 3. Your company has a Microsoft SQL Server Always On Availability group configured on their Azure virtual machines. You need to configure an Azure internal load balancer as a listener for the availability group. It is same as previous two questions, but the solution is different. And the solution is, you enable floating IP. Does the solution meet the goal? And the options are A, yes, B, no. And the correct option is A, yes. If you want to reuse the backend ports across multiple rules, you must enable floating IP in the rule definition. When the floating IP is enabled, Azure changes the IP address mapping to the front-end IP address of the load balancer front-end instead of backend instances IP. Without floating IP, Azure exposes VM instances IP. So, enabling floating IP changes the IP address mapping to the front-end IP of the load balancer to allow additional flexibility. Next, question number 4. You have an Azure subscription linked to an Azure Active Directory tenant. The tenant includes a user account named user1. You need to ensure that user1 can assign a policy to the tenant root management group. What should you do? And the options are A, assign the owner role for the Azure subscription to user1 and then modify the default conditional access policies. B, assign the owner role for the Azure subscription to user1 and then instruct user1 to configure access management for Azure resources. C, assign the global administrator role to user1 and then instruct user1 to configure access management for Azure resources. D, create a new management group and delegate user1 as the owner of the new management group. And the correct option is C, assign the global administrator role to user1 and then instruct user1 to configure access management for Azure resources. No one is given default access to the root management group. Azure AD global administrators are the only users that can elevate themselves to gain access. Once they have access to the root management group, the global administrator can assign any Azure role to other users to manage it. Next, question number 5. You have an Azure DNS zone named adatum.com. You need to delegate a subdomain named research.adatum.com to a different DNS server in Azure. What should you do? And the options are A, create NS record named research in the adatum.com zone. B, create a PTR record named research in the adatum.com zone. C, modify the SOA record of adatum.com. D, create an A record named star.research in the adatum.com zone. And the option is A, create a NS record named research in the adatum.com zone. NS record or name server record tells recursive name servers which name servers are authoritative for a zone. You can have as many NS records as you would like in your zone file. The benefit of having multiple NS records is the redundancy of your DNS service. Next, question number 6. You have 15 Azure subscriptions. You have an Azure Active Directory tenant that contains a security group named Group 1. You plan to purchase additional Azure subscription. You need to ensure that Group 1 can manage role assignments for the existing subscriptions and the planned subscriptions. The solution must meet the following requirements. Use the principle of least privilege. Minimize administrative effort. What should you do? And the options are A. Assign Group 1 the owner role for the root management group. B. Assign Group 1 the user access administrator role for the root management group. C. Create a new management group and assign Group 1 the user access administrator role for the group. D. Create a new management group and assign Group 1 the owner role for the group. And the option is B. Assign Group 1 the user access administrator role for the root management group. The user access administrator role enables the user to grant other user access to Azure resources. Next, question number 7. You have an Azure subscription named Subscription 1 that contains the storage accounts shown in the following table. Here we have the columns name, account kind, Azure service that contains data. Storage 1 is a storage which is a general purpose V1 kind, and Azure service that contains data is file. Storage 2 is general purpose V2, and the Azure service that contains data is file and table. Storage 3 is general purpose V2, and the service that contains data is queue. Storage 4 is a blob storage, and the Azure service that contains data is blob. You plan to use the Azure Import Export service to export data from Subscription 1. You need to identify which storage account can be used to export the data. What should you identify? And the options are A. Storage 1, B. Storage 2, C. Storage 3, D. Storage 4. And the correct option is D. Storage 4. For Azure Import Export service, import supports Azure Blob Storage and Azure File Storage, and export supports Azure Blob Storage. Next, question number 8. You need to create an Azure storage account that meets the following requirements. Minimizes costs, supports hot, cool, and archive blob tiers, provides fault tolerance if a disaster affects the Azure region where the account resides. How should you complete the command? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. In the answer area, and the option is storage V2. You may only tier your object storage data to hot, cool, or archive in blob storage and general purpose V2 accounts. General purpose V1 accounts do not support tiering. General purpose V2 accounts deliver the lowest per gigabyte capacity prices for Azure storage as well as industry competitive transaction prices. And the second option is standard _ GRS. Geo-redundant storage GRS is for cross-regional replication to protect against region-wide unavailability. Next, question number 9. You have an Azure subscription that contains an Azure storage account. You plan to create an Azure container instances named Container1 that will use a Docker image named Image1. Image1 contains a Microsoft SQL Server instance that requires persistent storage. You need to configure a storage service for Container1. What should you use? And the options are A. Azure Files, B. Azure Blob Storage, C. Azure Queue Storage, D. Azure DEPL Storage, and the correct option is A. Azure Files. Azure Files let you share data across multiple nodes and pods. Next, question number 10. You have the app service plans shown in the following table. Column names, name, operating system, location. ASP1 with Windows operating system in West US location. ASP2 with Windows operating system in Central US location. ASP3 with Linux operating system in West US location. You plan to create the Azure Web Apps shown in the following table. Column names, name, runtime stack, location. Web App 1 with runtime stack as .NET Core 3.0 in West US location. Web App 2 with runtime stack as ASP.NET 4.7 in West US location. You need to identify which app services plans can be used for the web apps. What should you identify? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. In the answer area for Web App 1, and the correct option is ASP1 and ASP3 only. .NET Core apps can be hosted both on Windows or Linux, not ASP2 because it is in a different region. The region in which your apps runs should be the same as the region of the app service plan. In the answer area for the second one for Web App 2, and the correct option is ASP1 only. Web App can only create and identified in app service plan in same region and resource group. For ASP.NET, it can only be created with Windows App Service Plan of ASP1. Next, question number 11. You have an Azure Kubernetes service cluster named AKS1 and the computer named Computer1 that runs Windows 10. Computer1 that has the Azure CLI installed. You need to install the kubectl client on Computer1. Which command should you run? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. In the answer area, and the correct options are AZ, AKS. To install kubectl locally, use the AZ-AKS install -CLI command. Azure CLI command starts with AZ and we use install-module to install a PowerShell module. Next, question number 12. You plan to move a distributed on-premises app named App1 to an Azure subscription. After the planned move, App1 will be hosted on several Azure virtual machines. You need to ensure that App1 always run on at least 8 virtual machines during planned Azure maintenance. And the options are A. 1 virtual machine scale set that has 10 virtual machines instances. B. 1 availability set that has 3 fault domains and 1 update domain. C. 1 availability set that has 10 update domains and 1 fault domain. D. 1 virtual machine scale set that has 12 virtual machines instances. And the correct option is A. 1 virtual machine scale set that has 10 virtual machines instances. By default, Azure uses 5 update domains and up to 3 fault domains. So in case you created 10 VMs in scale set, then you will have 2 VM in each update domain. So once one update domain is not available, then you get 4 domains with 8 VMs as required. Next, question number 13. You plan to deploy an Azure container instances by using the Azure Resource Manager template. And the template has the information with type Microsoft.container instance /container groups, name web prod, location West US, name for the container is web prod, and image properties Microsoft /IAS nano server, and protocol is TCP port 80, memory in GB 1.5, CPU 1, restart policy on failure, and the IP address port protocol TCP port 80, and the IP address type is public, OS type Windows. Use the drop-down menus to select the answer choice that completes each statement based on the information presented in the template. In the answer area, for the first one, internet users, and the option is can connect to the container from any device. No access restrictions are specified and the IP address type is public. Second answer area, if Internet Information Services IAS in the container fails, the container will restart automatically. As per the policy, restart policy is set as on failures. Hence, container will restart automatically. Next, question number 14. You need to deploy an Azure virtual machine scale set that contains 5 instances as quickly as possible. What should you do? And the options are A. Deploy 5 virtual machines. Modify the availability zone settings for each virtual machine. B. Deploy 5 virtual machines. Modify the size setting for each virtual machine. C. Deploy 1 virtual machine scale set that is set to VM virtual machine orchestration mode. D. Deploy 1 virtual machine scale set that is set to scale set VM orchestration mode. And the correct option is D. Deploy 1 virtual machine scale set that is set to scale set VM orchestration mode. For scale set VM orchestration mode, virtual machines instances added to the scale set are based on the scale set configured model. The virtual machine instance lifecycle of creation, update, deletion is managed by the scale set. Next, question number 15. You have an Azure subscription named Subscription 1 that contains the following resource group. Name RG1, region West US, tag 1, value 1. You assign an Azure policy named Policy 1 to Subscription 1 by using the following configurations. Exclusions, none. Policy definition, append a tag and its value to resources. Assignment name, Policy 1. Parameters, none. Tag name, tag 2. Tag value, value 2. After Policy 1 is assigned, you create a storage account that has the following configuration. Name, storage 1, location, West US, resource group, RG1, tags, tag 3, value 3. You need to identify which tags are assigned to each resource. What should you identify? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. In the answer area, for the first one, tags assigned to RG1 are tag 1, value 1 only. Second answer area, tags assigned to storage 1 is tag 2, value 2 and tag 3, value 3 only. tags applied to the resource groups are not inherited by the resources in the resource group. Here we end with part 12. Thank you for watching part 12 of Azure Administrator Associate Real Exam Questions and Answers. We hope you found it informative and helpful. If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe to our channel and comment for more related topics. We look forward to continuing the journey with you in next videos. Thank you.